Situated some 200 kilometres west of Sydney, is Australia's oldest inland city, Bathurst. Home to some 30,000 people, Bathurst had its proclamation by Governor Macquarie in 1815. With the discovery of gold in the 1850s, Bathurst grew rapidly. In 1885, Bathurst was finally proclaimed a city and has since developed into the thriving metropolis we see today. Surrounded by rolling plains and picturesque countryside, Bathurst has a thriving rural industry with sheep for wool and meat, wheat, cattle and the breeding of thoroughbred horses. Apart from the famous Edgell Canned Food Company, Bathurst has many industries here and is one of the largest areas in Australia for secondary education, with its many institutes and boarding homes. But to most people throughout the world, Bathurst means only one thing: motor racing. Since the road racing circuit at Mount Panorama was officially opened in 1938, the annual pilgrimage of spectators has been made twice a year since then, for the car racing in October and the bike racing at Easter. The Bathurst 1000 for cars and the motorcycling has come a long way since then, as these early pictures from the 1930s, the 40s and 50s clearly demonstrate, right up to the present day circuit we're seeing now. And boy, how pitch straight has changed. Long before the Mount Panorama circuit for road racing got underway, another form of racing was taking place in Bathurst. On the 29th of September 1928, the Bathurst Sports Ground opened its gates for the first time to this new form of motor racing known as Speedway. A team of riders ventured from Sydney to take part in the opening meeting. In the crowd that night was a young, freckle-faced, red-haired boy who, a decade later, was to have reached the pinnacle of Speedway racing to become the Speedway champion of the world. His name? Arthur George Wilkinson, but everyone knew him as Bluey. So in 1938, Bathurst had produced its first truly international world champion at London's Wembley Stadium. Because of recurring knee injuries, Bluey retired from active racing the next year to concentrate on promoting. But sadly, this truly great ambassador of Speedway racing was taken from us in 1939 when he was killed in a road accident in the Sydney suburb of Rose Bay. The whole township of Bathurst was in mourning. Speedway activity in Bathurst ceased in the early 1950s, and the only reminder today of those early days of Speedway is a bitumen cycle track at the old sports ground, which has replaced the cinders of a bygone era. 25 years ago, New Zealand Speedway rider Ivan Major had a dream to promote a truly international long track meeting here in Australia. So, 25 years down the track, so to speak, the now multi-world Speedway and long track champion has finally had his dream come true. With the help of local motorcycle businessman Kevin McDonald, it was decided that the inaugural 1989 Australian Long Track Grand Prix be staged on the 800-metre trotting track at the Bathurst Showground, only some 200 metres across the road from the original site of the Bathurst Speedway. So, on the 18th of November 1989, motorcycle dirt track racing has returned to Bathurst. The track and surrounding fence had to undergo a major facelift to bring it up to FIM standards, and so the track, which is normally used by the 1 horsepower variety, was now ready for action.
Cameras pan back from Mount Panorama, the world-famous motor racing track, Carrick Video welcomes you to the inaugural Australian Long Track Grand Prix at the Bathurst Showgrounds. My name is Peter Baker and I'll be taking you through tonight's big program of about 36 events. The scene being set at the moment. Riders in the pits preparing for the night's racing as the late afternoon sun settles over the central west city in New South Wales. Part of the pre-meeting entertainment there is provided by the Western Region Combined School Symphonic Wind Ensemble. They're entertaining part of the huge crowd that have filed into the Bathurst Showground for the meeting.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this long track Australian Grand Prix Speedway meeting.
The voice there of track announcer Will Hagan as the machines are wheeled out onto the track, ready for the rider introduction. Riders from England, America, Denmark and all over Australia are included in the lineup for this meeting, and it certainly shapes up as a very fine experience for everyone present. The riders now marching out onto the track, some of the world's top riders. Leading the parade there was the current world long track champion Simon Wigg. There he is, Simon Wigg, with the W on his breastplate. Chris Watson, Australia's many times dirt track and long track champion. Next to him, Gwyn Taylor, Phil Crump. Probably one of the greatest speedway riders this country's ever produced. Simon Wigg there being presented with his memento of the meeting by the Mayor of Bathurst, Anne Ashwood, who's been instrumental in helping to get this meeting off the ground. Many months of planning have taken place for this meeting to come together. Jeremy Doncaster there, the captain of the English Speedway team currently in Australia. Ivan Major, the man in the red cap, the man responsible for getting this very meeting off the ground. He's undoubtedly had a few anxious moments over a period of months, but tonight hopefully everything will come together and it will bear fruit for him. Still more mementos being handed out by the Mayor of Bathurst, Anne Ashwood. Going along the line there, Mick Poole in the centre of the screen at the moment. Mick, one of the members of the Australian Speedway team at the moment, and one of just about all the top Australian Speedway riders who are competing in this meeting tonight. Part of the crowd in one of the grandstands there, quite vocal, even for this early in the meeting. Stephen Davies on bike number 96. A is Gary Allen, New Zealander based in Brisbane. Some of the international stars there, Jeremy Doncaster on bike D. Brian Carger on bike M. Brian's come in as a late replacement for another world long track champion in Carl Mayer, who unfortunately had to pull out of the trip at the last moment. With Brian Carger from Denmark, a very worthwhile replacement. Gary Guillaume there accepting his memento from Ivan Major, and Ivan's just handed one over to Anne Ashwood for her to keep as a memento of this meeting. A group photo now being taken, and in just a moment the riders will be pushed off on their bikes to return to the pits and get ready for the first event on this historic program. rider introductions are all very well, but I think most of the guys are quite glad when they are finished so that they can get on with the job that they've all come for, and that's racing their motorcycles and entertaining what is a very big crowd here at the Bathurst Showground. John Langfield will be competing tonight in the over 40s class. John, of course, a former Speedway Test captain of Australia. Okay, we're ready to go racing with the first heat of this Australian long track Grand Prix. Simon Wigg, the current, in fact twice world long track champion in this one, as is Canadian Jason Rock, American Mike Faria. Probably the best of the Australians might well be number 79, Len Norris. From the outside though, it's Simon Wigg. Wigg swept straight down track and gone into turn one in the lead. Down this very long straight here at Bathurst, Simon Wigg, the race leader, going into turn 3, turn 4, and coming up the straight at the end of the first lap. Let's look at Wigg's style. Very different to riding a speedway bike, of course. Wigg looks back behind him, sees where the nearest opposition is. It's the American Mike Faria. Faria, one of the top-rated speedway riders in America. He's confined most of his racing to the States, and he's also a very experienced campaigner in other forms of motorcycling. Wigg lifts the front wheel up, as does Faria, coming down the straight the second time. At the moment, it's a nice, easy race for Simon Wigg. You'll expect some tougher opposition, tougher competition as the night wears on. But in this first heat, everything's going right for him. Mike Faria is back in second spot, and the best of the Australians is young Northern New South Wales rider Brendan Osborough in advance of veteran dirt tracker Len Norris. Wigg takes it easy, high around turn number 1, well clear of Faria. Home straight for the last time, and race 1, heat 1, has been won by Simon Wigg. Mike Faria is second, Brendan Osborough, Len Norris, Darren Etheridge and Greg Halls are the next ones through. Simon Wigg very early in the piece, showing that he's going to be one of the riders to beat tonight in this Australian long track Grand Prix.
Long track champion Simon Wigg. We've got a few riders still coming into a seat.
Riders moving into the tape now for the second heat of the Australian long track Grand Prix. Brian Carg of the Danes in this one, as is the New Zealand Kim Major, Scott Grant, another of the Americans. And the Australian riders Stephen Davies, Michael Holder and Brian Nixon among the main contenders in this one. The second heat, they've seen what Simon Wigg can do. These guys out to lay their own claims for tonight's Grand Prix. All riders will be contesting 3 heats before the semi-finals and finals. Tapes are up for heat 2. Stephen Davies there as one bike goes up in the air at the start, chasing one of his rivals across the track as they settle down out in front and move on to the back straight. Bike number 4 there, Brian Nixon is the race leader. Going through on the inside looks to be the Dane, Brian Carger. Carger, as we said, a late replacement for West-German superstar Carl Mayer. Carger there on the inside has worked through on to take the lead ahead of Brian Nixon. Carger, one of the new wave of Danish riders, hoping to fill the shoes. So sadly left vacant by the tragic injury to Eric Gunderson and the retirement of Tommy Knudsen. And Denmark certainly looking to Carger to produce big things for the next few years. They've done a lot of long track racing. Second heat, Brian Nixon still second. And it looks like Stephen Davies is third place. moment as he goes onto the back straight of the Bathurst Showground for the last time. Up the main straight, checkered flag is waiting, the rider to take it from Denmark, Brian Carger. Brian Nixon a second, Michael Holder got up there to grab third, ahead of Stephen Davies and Kim Major. Well, we've seen 2 heats of the long track Grand Prix now. We know that long tracks are raced on bigger tracks and they're faster races. But just how much difference is there in the bikes on long track and speedway? Earlier this afternoon, multi-Australian champion Chris Watson took time out to explain it to us.
The difference between a long track bike, which we're racing here tonight, mainly is it has gears. This one here is the God machinery from England. Has a 2-speed box, where a speedway bike is a straight drive from clutch to the back wheel. You would start off in low gear, and by pulling a lever on the handlebars, it locks it in the top gear. The whole race is done in 1 gear then. Suspension, the bike has suspension, conventional motorcycle suspension where you've got shocky swinging arm and back loop. The wheels are very much similar, same size wheels, tyre pressure's all the same. The angle of the fork is steeper. It's got more rake on the forks, which makes stability at high speeds and tracking much easier for 2-wheeling, where the speedway bike would want to be turned hard and on smaller tracks. The overall length would be probably 6 inches longer on the long track bikes, and they're probably easy to ride in deep, heavy tracks and rough circuits, but on the slick, small tracks, the speedway bike comes in its own. The bike would be valued probably at $8,500. Maintenance is very high on them, high speed, high revving engines, and they go very quick. That's about the only difference between them.
We're up to heat number 3 now. The first 2 heats dominated by overseas riders. There's only one overseas rider in this one, British Speedway team captain Jeremy Doncaster. 2, I suppose, if you count the New Zealander who spends all his time during the Australian season in Brisbane, Gary Allen. Good lineup of Australians: Glyn Taylor, Troy Butler, Phil Crump, Mick Poole, Gary Guillaume and Craig Boyce. All in this one for the 3rd heat as the Australians try to lay their claims to tonight's Grand Prix. Phil Crump there on bike 2 mid-track, who makes the best start and goes to the lead round turn number 1. Troy Butler's behind him. But it's Crump, first one onto the back straight. Almost in the veteran class tonight. He can well and truly ride in the over 30s, and in a couple of years' time he can ride in the over 40s, but he's still a top-ranking speedway rider in this country. In fact, going into this summer season, Crump appears to have retained, or regained rather, some of his enthusiasm that was perhaps a little bit lacking over the last few years. Good hit for the Australians at the moment, because behind Crump there's Jeremy Doncaster, but then follows Troy Butler, Mick Poole, Craig Boyce, Gary Guillaume and Glyn Taylor. Crump hanging his legs off the back of the bike. Looks a little bit different to what Wig was doing. Wig lays very flat on the bike. Crump seems to want to get his legs away from the side of the bike, but still it's paying off because he's well clear in this one. Down the straight, cocks the bike over going into turn 1. Crump, in fact, in the middle of a very busy weekend, because 24 hours ago he raced in Adelaide, and after this meeting he heads straight home to race Speedway again tomorrow night at Mildura. Checkered flag is waving. The Aussie fans are happy because Phil Crump is the rider to win heat number 3 ahead of Doncaster. Troy Butler, Mick Poole, Craig Boyce, Gary Guillaume, Glyn Taylor and Tim Hunt are all prominent speedway riders following him home. Well, this afternoon, our man in the pits, Len McFarlane, caught up with Phil Crump as he prepared for this meeting, and he asked him a little bit about how much long track racing he's done before and what he got planned for this 1989-1990 summer season.
Welcome to Bathurst.
Thanks very much.
Have you ridden many long track meetings?
When I was racing in Europe, in England a lot, I rode most weekends on the continent in long track or grass track meetings, yeah.
It differs a fair bit, the speedway, I guess.
Yes, the speeds are much greater, and of course there's more riders per race, and of course you've got that 2-speed gearbox, and you know, to get you off the start, but you know, it's pretty exciting stuff.
How do you feel about the track? Do you think it's holding up quite well?
Yes, it looks a pretty good track, although it's going to be very important, as it is everywhere, I suppose, to make a very good start, especially with 12 riders per race. To make a bad start, it's going to be pretty hectic around that first turn.
And who do you think the opposition will come from tonight?
Well, there's lots and lots of fantastic riders here. I'd hate to say which one would stand out. I suppose, obviously, World Long Track Champion Simon Wigg's got to be the one to beat, but there's several other riders that are terrific riders. Chris Watson, you know, they're all really good young riders, you know, and of course you can't give them an inch, otherwise they're gone.
And do you think you'll be riding speedway this season?
Yes, I'm riding in all the test matches this year against Englishmen, and I've got every weekend till the end of February I've got a couple of meetings, so that'll do me.
All right, the fourth heat, the riders preparing to move into positions now. This is the fourth heat being the last heat of the first round. All riders having one start in each of the 3 rounds to earn points to qualify them through to the semi-finals. England represented in this one by Peter Chapman. America has got Steve Lucero. For Australia, probably the most prominent names, Scott Humphreys. Sean Wilmot, of course, former Englishman, now a naturalised Australian, is in this one. And number 30, Chris Watson. Watson very wide on the track, going around Peter Chapman there as they go to the first corner. And Steve Lucero, the American, down low on the track. Watson on the outside, Lucero the inside. Watson, feet hanging off the back of the bike as he goes down the back straight, and he's shot clear now of Chapman by about 20 to 30 metres. Chris Watson, still in his mid-20s, but he's won something like 40 national and state titles in dirt track racing and long track racing over a period of about the last 8 years. It's a phenomenal record, and one that no rider in any other branch of motorcycling can match. Watson has opened up that lead even further as he goes into the third lap. The American Lucero there has raced several seasons in the British League, but the last few years he's concentrated on racing at home in the States. The wide open spaces there at turn 4 as we watch the bikes come onto the straight and down the main straight towards the finishing post. The finishing post actually for the trotting races here around the Bathurst Showground. You will have noticed that they're starting at the one end of the main straight, and in fact doing 4 laps plus the length of the straight for each race. I don't think it'll matter how far this one went though. Chris Watson would only get further in front. Checkered flag is out, and Chris Watson a very easy winner. The American Steve Lucero was second, England's Peter Chapman third, and they're followed home by Gavin Mate in 4th place. That's it for each of the riders. They've all had one round. They'll be back for more heats later on to gain points towards the semi-finals. Next up on the program, we move into something a little bit different, as the 125cc flat track class take to the track. One thing that these smaller capacity machines normally have in their favour is that they're very well matched on power and speed, and they invariably do cater for very close racing. A couple of Americans in this one. In fact, the 2 Americans who came out primarily for the motocross tomorrow Todd DeHoop and Kyle Lewis. They both jumped at the opportunity of racing in these flat track classes. And as they settle down there, one of the Americans, Todd DeHoop, is the race leader on the inside, although he's been pressured straight away by young Sydney rider Ben Archibald. And Archibald, in fact, has taken the lead as they go down the back straight the first time. Archibald and DeHoop in front. Look at that battle for third and fourth and fifth spot there. There's another gaggle of riders behind them, so the hope that we had that this 125 class would provide some close racing has certainly been borne out after just a lap of the race. Young Sydney sider, Ben Archibald. He undoubtedly has the crowd behind him at the moment as he leads the American. Todd DeHoop, Kyle Lewis, the rider with the K on the number plate, is there in third spot. Archibald goes wide. He's left a gap big enough for the American to go through, but Archibald switches back to the inside and comes back on the inside of the American down the straight, and he's retained the lead. Great effort by Archibald there. He made a mistake, but he quickly recovered. Come back and regain the lead. DeHoop hasn't given up though, he's pressuring on the outside. This is a great scrap. DeHoop looks as though he's pulled the whip there and nothing happened because he's dropped further back. Down into turn one, and Archibald set up the biggest lead he's had at any stage of the race, and he shoots about 15 to 20 metres clear. In the World Speedway fans who might have thought these flat track races were going to be one of the low points of the night, I think they've had those doubts and fears dispelled already, because this has been a great race with the first heat of the 125 and a good win for Sydney youngster Ben Archibald. Archibald takes the checkered flag ahead of the two Americans, Todd DeHoop and Kyle Lewis, and another couple of young guys. Sean Tompkins in fourth spot, Glenn Bowles, an experienced Victorian rider, was in fifth spot, and Damon Buckmaster in sixth. 125's the finish for now. They're back for two more rounds later in the night. 250cc flat track action time now with their first heat of the night. Two Americans in this one, Mike Farrier. Mike, of course, riding in the long track racing tonight, but he jumped at the opportunity of racing in the flat track class. Scott Brandt, another youngster who is racing both long track and 250cc class. And one of the Marlborough Yamaha dealer team riders, David Armstrong, of course, one of our top motocross riders in Australia. Charge of the Light Brigade round turn one. That's the American, Mike Farrier, out in front. Onto the back straight the first time, and Farrier's already opened up a gap of about 20 metres on his nearest rival. David Armstrong there, bike three, switching to the outside, making a run around one of his rivals there to go into second spot, actually. And Armstrong now trying to head back. It's already about a 40 or 50 metre gap behind Farrier. Of these Americans, of course, have got great experience in a number of classes of racing over in America, and this is showing with Farrier just coming out here, hopping onto a locally prepared bicycle and going out and showing the way to his rivals in this particular race. Of course, it makes for a very busy night for them, racing in two classes. Perhaps that's going to take a bit of a toll at the end of the night. For the time being, though, there's no stopping the American, Mike Farrier, as he goes well clear, going into the last lap of this first heat for the 250cc flat track class. He made a great start. He just played catch me if you can. They couldn't. And Mike Farrier coming up to take the checkered flag for his first win of the night in the 250cc class. Australian David Armstrong was second, Michael Bamford third, and Sean Giles in fourth spot. The 250cc class actually split up into two heats, and there are only points to win through to a final later tonight. This is the second heat for the other riders. And again in this one, some overseas interest. Three Americans, in fact. Steve Lucero, the other long tracker, and the two motocross riders, Todd DeHoop and Kyle Lewis. Tapes are up. Someone's turned right in the middle of the starting grid there and inconvenienced a couple of his rivals as they go into turn number one. Kyle Lewis, the rider on the outside there in the red jacket, fighting to get the lead. Todd DeHoop, the rider on the inside there, trying to pick up who that rider is in second spot. I think it's one of the local brigade actually, but Lewis and DeHoop. DeHoop goes inside, Lewis there, challenging for the lead around turn number one, and DeHoop has gone through to take the lead. Kyle Lewis coming back on the inside, challenging his countrymen as they go down the back straight the second time. Lewis a big dive underneath, but the gate shut on him. Good battle for third and fourth spot there too. But out in front, it's still DeHoop in front, Lewis second. The other American, Steve Lucero, there with 18 on his back. He's just gone through to take third spot ahead of local Sydney-based rider Damon Buckmaster. It's Americans 1, 2, 3 at the moment. Lap to go, board out now for the Americans. DeHoop in front, Lewis is second, there's Lucero in third spot. Certainly no stopping the Stars and Stripes Brigade in this one onto the main straight for the last time. And the race win going to Todd DeHoop. Second place has gone to Kyle Lewis. Next across the line is Steve Lucero. And then the locals headed by Damon Buckmaster, Dean Rowe and Mark Neville. And that was the second heat. All the riders in the 250cc flat track class have now had one outing. They'll all have three before the finalists are decided for that final race later in the program. We step up another notch now in engine capacity class with the 500cc flat trackers coming to the track for their first round. Eddie Warren, an American who's based himself in Australia throughout 1989 and done extremely well in all the motocross competition across the country. He's in this race. He's on bike number E. Against him, a gaggle of the locally based riders. There's Eddie Warren, bike E. On the outside of him, number 19, Sean Giles. But it's Warren who leads down into turn number one. Number 72, Glenn Bowles, an experienced campaigner from down Bendigo Way, races speedway, dirt track and long track racing. He too has raced in several classes tonight. Eddie Warren, of course, racing in the Supercross meeting, having a bit of a warm-up in this flat track class tonight, and at the moment doing it well. Glenn Bowles there in green leathers. He's riding on the 72 bike, and he's just got as good a lead over the third and fourth place riders as what Warren has over him. Bowles looks back. The next one there is number 19. That's Sean Giles. Followed through by Ivan Zarbo on bike 60. Up up high on the track down the main straight and cuts down low, drifts up a little bit off the white line as they go around turn 1 and 2. And Warren's so far ahead at the moment that the line doesn't really matter. He's doing it as he likes out in front.
Third place is still 19. That's the addition.
There's the checkered flag for Eddie Warren, and as he takes it, the second place getter Glenn Bowles barely coming into the main straight. Bowles does get second ahead of Sean Giles and Mark Salter, up for fourth ahead of Ivan Szabo and Todd Brennan. 500cc flat trackers, they've got 3 rounds, and like the 125s, their winner will be decided on points over those 3 rounds. Another interview that our man in the pits, Len McFarlane, did this afternoon was with the winner of that race, Eddie Warren.
We're speaking to Eddie Warren, one of the American riders here at the Australian Long Track Grand Prix. Eddie, you've been in Australia for a while?
Yeah, I got over here last New Year's Eve, so I've been here 11 months. Really enjoyed myself. I've been doing some motocrossing and go-kart racing, and yeah, having a good time.
You're riding in the long track meeting tonight and again in the Supercross meeting tomorrow, is that right?
Yeah, the flat track tonight was just kind of a bonus. We decided to take part in it, and we built a special bike for it, and yeah, we're gonna have a go.
How do you think you'll go in the long track this evening?
Well, right now my times are the best of anybody in our class, so yeah, we look to win it.
And tomorrow in the Supercross?
I'm a lot more familiar with that, so yeah, there'll be some tough competition. Craig Dack's back and a few of the boys, so I think it'll be a really good night's racing.
Okay, good luck to Eddie Warren.
Thanks a lot.
Just 3.2 kilometres.
Back to the long track racing now, the second round of riders, second round of heats for all the riders. And this one is heat number 5. Simon Wigg in this one, as is Kim Major. The overseas entries there. Depleted field as they head off down the chute the first time, and it's Simon Wigg in front. Great start again this time from Simon Wigg. Good Australians in this one. Phil Crump, Brian Nixon, who showed out well in his first race, Mick Poole and Chris Watson. But at the moment they're all chasing the reigning World Long Track champion Simon Wigg. Mick Poole in second place at the moment, followed by Chris Watson, and looks like Phil Crump in fourth. Crump not reproducing that electrifying start he made in his first heat. He's got to be content with sitting back in fourth place at the moment. Watson challenging there on the outside of Mick Poole. Poole's in trouble by the look of it. He's dropped back there as Watson goes into third place. Watson, Crump is now fourth. Wigg shows the back straight fans how to lift the wheel going down that straight at speed.
And then Paul's got trouble.
Wigg's well clear. Again, lifting that wheel even higher this time as he goes down the main straight, up very high on the track. Most of the riders haven't been up on that part of the track. Going around turn 1 and 2. Simon Wigg is certainly looking very comfortable. He could be sitting in an armchair for all we know. He's just that at ease on the bike. Gets to work now, lifts the front wheel as he comes down the straight for the last time, and Wigg's taken the checkered flag ahead of Chris Watson, Brian Nixon, Phil Crump, Kim Major and Rodney Colquhoun. Earlier on, Glyn Taylor and Michael Holder apparently excluded for breaking the tapes. Let's go back to this afternoon now when Len McFarlane spoke to Simon Wigg.
Simon, you've just rushed to the track. You've only been in Australia a few days. Are you ready for this big meeting?
I would have liked to have done a bit of practice, that's for sure. The bike only got here this morning at 6 o'clock in Sydney, so we just thrown it together, and obviously we're going to make the most of it, but it would have been nice to prepare a bit more for it.
Who do you think your competition will be tonight?
I think all the boys, you know, there's a lot of very, very good riders here, and you know, I don't think you can single any of them out. They're all flyers, and they're all very capable of winning everything, so I think got to watch out for all of them, really.
Have you been riding a lot of meetings in England and Europe in long track?
Yeah, I suppose I've done about 30 30 long track meetings this season.
This season.
Yeah, long track meetings and grass track. So that's added to the speedway season, of course. You know, so I'm pretty busy with this just as much as I am with speedway, really.
And how long are you in Australia for?
Nearly a week. I go home next weekend, so I'm just here for this today.
Well, good luck in the meeting tonight.
Thanks very much.
Heat 6 of the Long Track Grand Prix now. The riders on the track. Gary Allen, the Brisbane-based Kiwi in this one, as is the Dane, Brian Carger. Good contingent of Australians: Troy Butler, Gary Guillaume, Sean Wilmot, Craig Boyce, Len Norris and Stephen Davies. Someone having a bit of trouble there in the middle of the starting grid. Stops himself before he touches the tapes, which are now up, and the race is underway. Looks like the Dane, Brian Carger, sweeps to the lead again. Carger riding with the M number plate there. The entry prepared for Karl Mayer, West German superstar, who was a late scratching from this meeting. And Carger's certainly come in and filled those very big shoes capably so far. Carger the leader. Two Australians behind him there look to be Troy Butler and Craig Boyce. Carger and Butler would be rivals fairly regularly during the British League season, both competing in the British League. Craig Boyce, of course, rides over in England as well, but Craig rides in the National League. Boyce there on the inside challenging Troy Butler for second spot. Butler very high on the track, holding his line at the moment and holding on to second spot. Good scrap between these two. Points at stake in this race for a semi-final berth. Although certainly you would expect both of these guys to qualify through to the semis without much trouble. It's not stopping them though, turning on a good scrap in this one. Carries on down the back straight for another lap. Turn 3 the last time. Boyce making a big charge around the outside. Carger looks like he's got problems. Boyce has gone around the outside of Butler. The Dane's gone. Down to the checkered flag. Inches in it. And Craig Boyce has got up to beat Butler. He was trying to do that the whole race, but the Dane, Brian Carger, has had problems and dropped right out of it. Boyce has won it from Butler, Stephen Davies, Len Norris, Gary Guillaume, and Brian Carger has come home in 10th place. Disaster for the Dane. Heat 7 now, the long track. Jeremy Doncaster on bike number D. Two of the Americans, Steve Lucero on L, Mike Farrier on F. Perhaps the top-rated Australian, a youngster, Tim Hunter on bike 31. He's on the outside of the track there. Stakes are up, 10 bikes. They're all going different directions for the first 20 metres. As they settle down around turn number 1, the American, Steve Lucero's mid-track. The other American there going very wide, trying to peg him back. Jeremy Doncaster, the English Speedway team captain, goes through on the inside, and he's taken the lead as they hit turn 3 the first time. Doncaster takes the American very wide. Great dice in this one. Englishman Jeremy Doncaster in front, ahead of Mike Farrier and Steve Lucero, the two Americans. Best of the Australians is still Tim Hunter on bike 31. He's hanging on well in 4th spot at the moment, but he can't make any impression on the three overseas riders. Doncaster, in fact, was pulled fairly well clear of the two Americans at the moment. To go, board. Still Jeremy Doncaster in control, back straight for the last time. too easy in the first 100 metres or so, but he certainly stamped his authority on this one. And Jeremy Doncaster, a good winner in Heat 7. Well clear there of the two Americans, Mike Farrier and Steve Lucero. And even further back come the best of the Australians in that particular heat, Tim Hunter in 4th spot and Matthew Poole in 5th. Matthew Poole, younger brother of Mick Poole, and Tim Hunter has his father racing on the program tonight. There's another father and son combination, the Platts. But earlier today, Glenn McFarlane took some time to talk to Tim Hunter.
We're speaking to Tim Hunter, one of the young up-and-coming riders here. Tim, how do you think you'll go against the stiff opposition, the international riders?
Yeah, well, went out there today in practice, and the track kind of suited me out there, so I'll see how I go out in the first heat against them.
And I believe your father is riding here tonight as well?
Oh, yeah, he's trying to have a ride tonight, but we'll see how he goes too, eh?
Yeah. Do you have a race against your father tonight?
No, none tonight. No.
None tonight.
No.
Do you think you'd clean him up if you had a race against him?
Oh, we had a race a couple of weeks ago down at one of the local tracks down at Sydney, and he wasn't even in the background.
All right, good luck in the Australian Long Track Grand Prix tonight.
Thank you.
And it's Heat 8 now of the Australian Long Track Grand Prix from the Bathurst Showgrounds. The second round of heats, and this is the last bracket of riders to have their second race. American Scott Brandt, Canadian Jason Rock, Englishman Peter Chapman in this one. Probably the best known of the Australians. Riding bike number 9 is Scott Humphries. And it looks like Scott Humphries has made one of the best starts. Down fairly well on the track. Moves up a little bit off the white line, and he's the race leader as they go around turn number 1 and 2. Scott Humphries, a Sydney-based rider. Been racing Speedway now for about 6 or 7 years, I suppose, and he did go to England during the 1989 season and made a good fist of racing with the famous Wimbledon team in the National League. Jason Rock there, the Canadian rather, with the J plate on his back. As they go onto the back straight for the second time, Scott Humphries with a good advantage over the rest of the field. Mid-race distance to Scott Humphries, the race leader. Good scrap back for the minor placings there. Number 38 is Greg Hall. Checkered flag is out. A good win to Sydney rider Scott Humphries, the American Scott Brandt second. Gold Coast rider Greg Halls in third place. Englishman Peter Chapman was next, followed by Brendan Osborough. That was Heat 8, the last of the heats in the second round for the long track. One more round to go to gain points for the semi-finals. Something we haven't seen for a long time is some of these guys go racing. The over 30s classic class for Prix 1974 machines, and I guess some of these guys are going to be a little bit stiff and sore and sorry tomorrow when they wake themselves up. A couple of very prominent local names in this one. Bike number 77, Glenn McDonald, certainly the best credentialed of all these riders in either speedway or dirt track racing. Glenn, of course, the son of Kevin McDonald, well-known Bathurst identity, who's had such a big hand in helping to organise this meeting. And Glenn McDonald looks to be in about 4th place as they go around turns number 1 and 2. 120, Fred Hall. 118, Alan Jones, two of the leading contenders at the moment. Glenn McDonald going around the outside of Jones into second spot. Well, Glenn McDonald's just breezed through on the inside there to take over the lead ahead of Glenn Neal. 58 and 8, having a good scrap there. That's Glenn Neal and another Bathurst rider, Jeff Grabham, who raced Speedway back in the mid-70s, I think it was. Also a very prominent name in dirt track racing for many years. Glenn Neal on screen at the moment, ahead of Alan Jones. And they're all chasing this guy, Glenn McDonald. Checkered flag and a win for the local Bathurst rider, Glenn McDonald. Following him across the line was Fred Hall. And Alan Jones relegated to third spot there late in the race. Fourth was Glenn Neal and Jeff Grabham in fifth spot. Okay, we've had the over 30s, now the over 40s. Again for machines which date back prior to 1974. And a couple of names that really stick out in this one. Former Australian Speedway team captain John Langfield, Seth Platt, who's also got his son riding tonight, Ty Platt in the long track racing. And bike number 70, Trevor Hunter. Trevor, the popular proprietor of Stony Creek Motorcycles. I wonder how his reaction will be to his son Tim's comments earlier in that interview. Tim seeming to ride off his father, but Trevor Hunter, certainly a very big name in dirt track racing from the 1960s. Seth Platt, the race leader at the moment. John Langfield going into second spot ahead of Trevor Hunter. Tim might have felt a bit unwell there for a while with his father leading the race, but Trevor's been relegated back to third spot at the moment behind Seth Platt and John Langfield. And watching these two guys, I mean, it just takes your memory back to the Sydney Showground in what, about the late 1960s, when they were both among the backmark riders down at the famous Speedway Royal. John Langfield there even wearing the old kangaroo breastplate, number 1 on his back, that he carried many, many times representing Australia in Speedway test match competition. But at the moment though, Langfield is trailing another of his rivals from that era at the Sydney Showground, Seth Platt, on bike number 41. Platt and Langfield both looking very comfortable there as they come onto the main straight. Checkered flag waves, and the first of their 3 races is out of the way. Platt winning from John Langfield, Trevor Hunter hanging on for third, John Sutton and George Watson. In fact, that's another father and son combination, George being the father of Chris Watson. I wonder just what makes some of these guys want to come back. Perhaps we might find out when we listen to Len McFarlane talk to John Langfield earlier today.
We're speaking to John Langfield, one of the all-time great Australian riders. John, you've entered the classic class here at the Australian Long Track Grand Prix. How do you think you'll go?
I think I'll get around there all right. It's a long time. I think it's about 12 years now since I've had a ride, but I felt it was pretty good. There's some fairly good motorbike riders around here my age, though.
Can you explain just quickly some of the rules for the classic machines?
I think the rules are that they've got to have no brakes, and they've got to use the same tyre, and they've got to be a 2-valve engine, which is opposed to the very fast bikes of today with 4 valves, and that's about the only difference.
And how's it feel to be back in the saddle after so many years?
Very exciting, and not much different. I feel like I haven't been off the bike.
Good luck in the meeting tonight.
Great, thank you.
Right, we're back now to the 125cc flat track class, and you'll remember earlier on the program what a great race these guys turned on in their first heat. The Americans, Kyle Lewis and Todd DeHoop, chasing the Sydney youngster Ben Archibald. And they're about to go and do it once again. Right, as they're moving up to the starting line.
So the 125s are lined up now for round 2, 4 laps the main one.
And off they go. The charge down the main straight the first time. As they settle down, going around turn 2 and onto the back straight. Number 68, another of the talented youngsters, Damon Buckmaster is the leader on the outside, but he's challenged immediately by Kyle Lewis. And Glenn Bowles going very wide on the track there, laying down his claim. Well, look at this charge as they come onto the main straight. You can throw a blanket over about half a dozen contenders in this one. In the 125, certainly picking up just where they left off in their first heat. Buckmaster in front. Kyle Lewis is second. Glenn Bowles is third. Lewis comes through on the inside now of Buckmaster. And there's another rider. It's Ben Archibald who won the first heat. Archibald coming up on the inside of Glenn Bowles. Forces Bowles very wide as they come onto the main straight the second time. Todd DeHoop's in there behind him too in 5th spot, but he's only about 10 metres from the leader. Buckmaster in front. Archibald's gone right around the outside to grab 2nd spot. Lewis looks behind him and he thinks that damn young Sydney side is there again as Archibald really throws down the challenge on the outside. Into the main straight for the last time. Bowles is third. DeHoop's on the inside. Across the track, checkered flags out. And that was very close, but Ben Archibald. I think Archibald has just got the nod ahead of Kyle Lewis. Glenn Bowles in 3rd spot. Todd DeHoop 4th. Damon Buckmaster, he's come 5th, but he's been less than 10 metres from the winner. A great race, again, from the 125cc flat track class. Back-to-back wins for Ben Archibald. Interesting here to look on the infield because the American Kyle Lewis has just jumped off the 125cc bike and straight onto the 250cc bike to come out for this very next race. Lewis, in fact, joining 2 of his countrymen in this 3rd heat for the 250cc class, Steve Lucero and Mike Farrier, also in this particular race. Sean Giles on bike 19, perhaps one of the best performed of the local riders in the first round of heats. Well, Lewis certainly should be warmed up. In body, I don't know about bike, although the bike seems to be firing all right because it is, in fact, Kyle Lewis leading around turn 1 and 2 ahead of fellow countryman Mike Farrier. Sean Giles there in 3rd spot. Farrier swept around the outside now, though, ahead of Lewis at the end of the first circuit of the track. And Mike Farrier, one of the United States top speedway riders, leading Kyle Lewis, one of their best performed motocrossers on the domestic scene in the United States. Tonight racing in this flat track class, which is basically a class 4 motocross bikes with a few adjustments made to their suspension. Certainly whether it's been long track riders or motocrossers, they all seem to have adapted to this particular class very well, and all the flat track races so far tonight have been quite competitive. This one, Mike Farrier, the leader. Lewis still back there in 2nd spot. As the checker flag flies for the 2 Americans there, Mike Farrier in 1st place, Kyle Lewis in 2nd, Sean Giles in 3rd spot, repeating his good form of earlier on, followed by David Lowry and Mark Niebel. Up towards the starting positions for heat number 4. of the 250cc flat track class. The second outing for all these riders. And this one we've got two Americans again, Scott Grant and Todd DeHoop. One of Australia's leading motocrossers there. Just on the right-hand side of the screen was David Armstrong, one of the members of the Marlborough Yamaha dealer team. Damon Buckmaster also in this race. Damon stood out in one of those earlier 125cc races. They're underway in the fourth heat for the 250s. A big charge from the outside there. Back straight, let's pick them up. Todd DeHoop is the race leader. Number 3 on the outside, David Armstrong, challenged now on the inside. DeHoop still the leader. Armstrong third. Grant is fourth on the outside. Good scrap developing between these two. David Armstrong and Scott Grant. Grant goes around Armstrong to claim second spot. And they've set themselves quite apart from the rest of the field at the moment. Armstrong in a few difficulties there, dropping back. Grant's in trouble too. Loses some ground and Armstrong sweeps around him down the back straight. Good work of the previous lap coming to nothing there as he got into trouble going on to the back straight. Still seems to be having some problems controlling that bike. DeHoop celebrates with a big wheelie. They take the checkered flag for heat number 4 of the 250. DeHoop will win it from David Armstrong, Scott Grant and Damon Buckmaster. Heat 9. This last round of heats reduced to 3 laps. 2 Americans in this one again. Lucero and Faria. Phil Crump, Brian Nixon and Stephen Davies, carrying the hopes of most of the Australian fans. Size of the field's dwindled a little bit for this one. Most of the riders choosing to start on the outside of the track with just one bike way down low. Phil Crump on bike number 2 is the best to begin, and he leads around the first corner. Two Americans dicing there. Lucero ahead of Farrier. Stephen Davies on bike 96 in 4th spot. While Crump goes clear out in front, certainly a great scrap developing for 2nd, 3rd and 4th places between the 2 Americans and Stephen Davies. Lucero has got 2nd at the moment. Faria is 3rd. Davies hasn't given up the ghost though. He's fighting hard, trying to work a passage through on the inside of Faria. The Americans wide. Davies trying to keep a tighter line there and find a way through on the inside, but the gate shuts. Crump well clear. The Americans in a bit of trouble there as they come onto the straight the last time. Well, actually it was Davies who got into a spot of bother as Crump goes down to take what is in fact the 1 lap to go board. Crump well out of camera shot at the moment as the interest still settles on the battle for 2nd between the 2 Americans, Lucero and Faria. Stephen Davies behind them there, pressured by, looks like Brian Nixon as Crump takes the checkered flag. He's won this one by about 100 metres. Steve Lucero narrowly beating countryman Mike Faria for 3rd. Stephen Davies just holding off Brian Nixon, and they were followed home by Kim Major. Straight into heat number 10 now, Gary Allen. the Brisbane-based Kiwi, Jason Rock, the Canadian. Some good Australian representation from Troy Butler, Scott Humphries, who won his last heat, Sean Wilmot, Mick Poole, Chris Watson, Glenn Bowles, certainly a classy Australian contingent in this particular race. Mick Poole stopped in his last heat, so he's wanting to pick up some big points in this one to ensure he gets through to the semi-final. Troy Butler mid-track, but the race leader is Chris Watson. Watson, race leader as they go onto the back straight the first time. Butler is second. Scott Humphries is third, and it looks like Mick Poole in fourth spot. Butler's down, boom, boom behind him. The three down on the track. Butler was the first to go down. Scott Humphries and Mick Poole ploughing into the wreckage there. Butler's up, limping away. Race continues at the moment. Chris Watson there on camera. The bike and a couple of the riders still down on the track at the moment. I think the yellow flags have been put out. Mick Poole certainly waving to stop the race. They're very reluctant to do so by the look of it. First rider to fall there was Troy Butler. He just seemed to stumble going into turn 3 and 4, came down, and the two riders behind him, Scott Humphries and Mick Poole, didn't have anywhere to go. Butler fairly quickly to his feet and limped away. Mick Poole didn't appear to be too badly hurt. He was up on his haunches and helping the rider on camera at the moment, Scott Humphries, who seems to have taken the worst of this particular fall. Nods his head, says, yes, I'm all right. And thankfully that board not needed, as Humphries has helped from the track. Unfortunate for Scott Humphries because he looked good earlier in the night, won his second round heat. Mick Poole there headed back to the pits on foot. As the LADA support vehicle, the LADA people generous sponsors of this particular meeting, and they're providing the trailer taking those bikes back to the pits. Bikes forming up again for the rerun to this particular heat, Heat 10, a depleted field with three of the fairly prominent Australian names all sidelined from this rerun. One very big name Aussie is left in it though, Chris Watson on bike number 30. Watson fights his bike for control as they go down the main straight the first time, but by the time they get round turn 1 and on to turn 2, it is Chris Watson who has set up a lead of some 15 to 20 metres. In fact, he's out of camera shot there as they go down the back straight. Watson has already forced a lead of about 20 to 30 metres over his rivals, 54 Justin Pryor. Justin, another youngster who went off to England for a taste of speedway racing in the UK this season. And he's holding second place at the moment. Green leather Glenn Bowles, very competitive in all his races tonight. He's holding down third spot. Pryor on camera there, just ahead of Bowles, and their battles for second and third spot as Chris Watson disappears into the distance. Watson looks back, you can see that he's fairly well clear in this one. No need to push himself. Easy points. Watson will get through to the semi-finals without any problem. Maybe not so for Justin Pryor and Glenn Bowles though. They really need these points to cement a place in the later stages of this Australian Long Track Grand Prix. Sponsored incidentally by Continental Airlines. Long-time backers of Ivan Major, and they've come to the party with support for this particular meeting. Chris Watson in turn 3 and 4 now. He's well clear of his rival. He's going to win this one by about 100 metres as he comes onto the main straight. Way back in the distance there, the next place getters are going to be Justin Pryor, Glenn Bowles, Greg Halls and Gary Allen. Well, earlier Chris Watson talked about the difference in bikes. Let's now listen to how he felt his chances are.
What do you think your chances are tonight against the international opposition?
Well, Simon Wigg has shown great form last night. He's current world champion, which speaks for itself. Jeremy Doncaster is also an Englishman who goes very quick. We've got a Dane and a couple of Americans, which all have a no slouch on the track. So, but a couple of good Australian riders. It'll be very interesting, but hopefully get a good start. Could come up with a win.
Who do you think your opposition will be in Australia? Some of the Australian riders will go well tonight.
Quite practiced today. Bill Crump, Lee Norris, Stephen Davies, Mick Poole, Troy Butler, all going extremely hard. And a lot depends on how strong the engine is to make that start into the corner first.
That's where it's very important, Chris, on a long track like this. Is at the start. You're prepared for that?
Yeah, you got to set your machinery up so they go make a good start. Once you make a start, well, the track's basically yours. You've got to come from behind. You've got to go through the dirt flying off the back wheel and change your lines. It makes it so much easier to make a good start and win from the front.
And how is the track, Chris? Are you happy with how the track's come up?
Oh, the track's very fast. He's probably doing over 180 kilometres an hour, nearly down the straight. And the corners are rideable that you've got to turn the bike. So it's not an easy track to ride, but it's very exciting and fast.
Well, good luck in the meeting tonight.
Thank you very much.
Heat 11 of the Long Track Grand Prix is on the starting grid now. Peter Chapman from England is there. Australians Glyn Taylor, Gary Guillaume, Tim Hunter and Len Norris, all in their last outing to gain points for a semi-final berth. Brian Carger also in the lineup for this one. Mid-track, it looks like Gary Guillaume is the race leader as they get to turn number 1. Guillaume mid-track, outside him is Len Norris. Norris has never been speedway racing, but he's been a very big name in dirt track and long track racing in Australia for many years. One rider looks as though he's gone down to Lisco there, going extremely wide on turn number 4. Into the straight after the end of a lap and a bit. It's still Guillaume in front. Norris is second. Guillaume hasn't ridden much speedway or long track or anything for a few years now, and in fact is looking at this just as a one-off meeting tonight. Jason Rock, the Canadian, diving down low there, trying to pick up a few places back further in the field. But out front, there's no change in the order. Guillaume in front, Norris is second, Brian Carger in third spot. Those three are pulled away from the rest of the field as they now going to start their final lap. Guillaume's maintained that 10 to 15 metre buffer right throughout. Norris makes one last charge up on the outside. Can't quite make it, and Guillaume takes the checkered flag ahead of Len Norris. Brian Carger. Glyn Taylor was there in fourth spot, followed by Darren Etheridge, Tim Hunter and the Englishman Peter Chapman. Heat 12, the final heat. The last chance for these particular riders to gain points for a semi-final berth. Simon Wigg and Jeremy Doncaster, the two leading lights from England in this one, as is the American Scott Brandt. Probably the best Australian in this one, number 46, Craig Boyce. And it looks like Jeremy Doncaster to set up the lead as they get to turn 1. Wigg started very low down on the track, and he's moved into second spot as they go onto the back straight. Craig Boyce there in contention as well. Doncaster just ahead of his countryman Simon Wigg. Wigg dives down low, takes Doncaster very, very high around turn 1 there. Certainly didn't do any favours for his British Lions teammate as Wigg takes control. He's won his first 2 heats, obviously very determined to keep that unbeaten record intact by the way he dived under Doncaster on that last turn. Wig, Doncaster, back to Boyce in third spot. Wig very, very high on the track again. He looks as though he's gone out with the view of trying out different lines on the track in case it's needed later on in the night. 1 lap to go. Board is out and Wig very, very high again. Doncaster on what seems the quicker line down a bit low, but Wig still in control. Could be a good ploy by Wig. Bigger fields coming up in the semi-finals. He might need to use that bit of track. It hasn't cost him in this one because he's come onto the main straight and he's going to take his third win in 3 starts in the heats. Simon Wig crosses the finishing line ahead of Jeremy Doncaster and Craig Boyce. Further back then to 2 more Australians in Michael Holder and Rodney Colhoun. The third and final round of the 125cc flat track class is the next one on the program, and the big interest in this is whether the Sydney teenager Ben Archibald can maintain his points lead. He's won his first 2 races. At the moment he's got a fairly healthy points lead over the 2 Americans, Kyle Lewis and Todd DeHoop. Like DeHoop's the rider who hits first turn in front. Both the Americans have been very competitive earlier in the night in these flat track races, and DeHoop leads his countryman Carl Lewis down the back straight the first time. Glenn Bowles there, the green leathered rider, is in third spot as the 2 Americans are having a great scrap out in front. There's Archibald by the look of it, goes around the outside of Bowles, challenging for third place. DeHoop, Lewis is second. Archibald gets pretty wide, drops a little bit back behind the Americans actually. Archibald sitting in third spot at the moment, and that'll be enough for him actually if he can hold that spot till the end of the race, but he's got a pack of marauders behind him trying to take that third place off him. That pack's dropped a little bit back behind the 2 Americans at the moment. There's still a great scrap going on there for third place. Down the back straight, DeHoop still in front. Lewis is second. Hasn't given up the ghost either. Here's the battle for third place. Bowles has gone through on the inside of Archibald. The 2 Americans go onto the straight. The gaggle of riders behind them down to the checkered flag. And it's the 2 Americans in control. DeHoop, Lewis ahead of Glenn Bowles, Ben Archibald just ahead of Damon Buckmaster, and that'll still give Archibald the overall victory in this class ahead of DeHoop and Lewis. More action now for the over 30s classic class, round 2. Glenn McDonald, a very easy winner in the first of these races, and I think he'd be a very short price favourite to make it 2 on the trot in this one. Only a few of these guys did actually go speedway racing in their competition days, most of them dirt trackers. The first one to show out there is number 120, Fred Hall. Glenn Neal, again prominent early in this race, and Glenn McDonald, 77, moving up there on the inside. McDonald's through to second spot. He makes a big charge through on the inside of Fred Hall, and he's already gone to take over the lead before a lap is over. Hasn't gated well in either race, but that hasn't stopped him taking control fairly early into the race. Glenn McDonald, top flight speedway rider and dirt track rider in his day in the late 1970s. Retired when he was still fairly young, but unable to resist the temptation to have another fling tonight in his over 30s class. Looks still pretty comfortable too on that bike as he comes onto the main straight. Heads off fairly well clear of his rivals at the moment. Fred Hall on 120 and Glenn Neal on bike number 58, who are having a good scrap for second and third place. Glenn Neal on camera at the moment. He's shaken off his rival there for second spot as Glenn McDonald comes onto the main straight. This is the checkered flag coming out now from McDonald, making it 2 on the trot, ahead of Glenn Neal. Fred Hall dropping back slightly to third place, ahead of Jeff Grabham. That was the over 30s. This is the over 40s. Their second heat now, and we look for another battle between John Langfield and Cess Platt in this particular race. Trevor Hunter also, Tim Hunter's father, did get out fairly well in the last one. We'll see how he goes. There's Hunter on the outside, actually. Trevor Hunter, one of the quick gators, but not quite quick enough to beat John Langfield into turn number 1. Langfield, the race leader, as the field hits the back straight the first time. Bike number 70, Trevor Hunter, is in second spot. Cess Platt not nearly as quick away this time. And there's Platt just nosing into the picture there, going around Trevor Hunter into second place, but he's got a job in front of him trying to haul in John Langfield. Trevor Hunter's bike stopped there, down on the inside of the track, as Langfield, one of the real characters of speedway racing in Australia in the late 60s and early 70s. He made a number of comebacks, and as he said earlier today when we spoke to him, it's hard to resist the temptation to get out on the bike. Feels as though he's never been away from it, actually. Looks behind him and sees Cess Platt there, about 20 metres behind at the moment. Platt not making any great impression though, and it looks to be John Langfield heading for a win in this particular race. Langfield dives into turn 3, turn 4, onto the main straight, and he's coming down to take the checkered flag. He was beaten in the first one by Cess Platt, but he's reversed that in the second heat. Platt coming across the line second, ahead of John Sutton. Riders fairly well spread out, but doubtless enjoying their return to competition tonight. A vital race, this one, the last chance qualifier for these riders, giving them, as it suggests, the last chance to qualify for a spot in the semi-finals. New Zealander Gary Allen and the Canadian Jason Rock, two of the internationals in this particular lineup, together with a number of reasonably well-performed local speedway riders like Justin Pryor and Rodney Colquhoun. Could be some desperate action in this one, because the guys that don't do any good, they can pack up for the night. Bike 214 is the race leader down the back straight the first time. It's a local Sydney rider from the Parramatta Club, Gavin Mate. Big run through on the inside there from Justin Pryor, moving up into second spot. Pryor continuing on with that attack, going around the outside of Mate as they go into the first turn on the second occasion. 99, Matthew Poole tucked in there behind them in third spot. Looks like older brother Michael's missed out on the semi-final, so Matthew trying to uphold the family name in this one. Pryor's leading though, and it's Poole tucked in on the inside there behind Gavin Mate in third place at the moment. Still fairly well bunched as they go down the straight there. Pryor's had problems momentarily, and he's swept past on the outside, but Pryor, luckily for him, has got his bike going again as Gavin Mate takes over the lead once more. Mate in front, Pryor a second, and that's Rodney Colquhoun moved through into third place. One lap to go, Bird was out. First to get it was Gavin Mate. Justin Pryor challenged on the inside at the moment by bike number 6. Rodney Colquhoun. He couldn't carry on with that though, and he settled in again in third spot behind the race leader, Gavin Mate. Big charge around the last corner though. You think these guys were racing in the final rather than just for a chance in the semi. Down to the line, it's Gavin Mate the winner. Just ahead of Justin Pryor and Rodney Colquhoun. A fair gap then back to Shane Haggerty and Gary Allen in 5th place.
Gary Allen on the main.
250cc action again, heat 5. This is the 3rd qualifying ride for these guys. One of the Americans in the field, or two actually, Kyle Lewis and Scott Brandt. A couple of locals have performed very well so far. Damon Buckmaster's in this one, as is Sean Giles. Pushing the bikes back from the start there. I think a few of them got a little bit toey moving up to the line. All seems set now though for the 50th of the 250cc flat track class. Kyle Lewis in the middle of the pack there, but he's swamped a little bit by two of his rivals as they go into turn number 1. There's Lewis, race leader. No, he's not the race leader. I was looking back in the pack there. Lewis is in fact in 2nd spot. At the moment got a battle on his hands with, it looks like young Damon Buckmaster. Buckmaster goes wide, he's left too big a gap there, and Lewis goes through to take the lead. Battle continues on down the back straight. They're still locked together, these two. Lewis, the inside, gets the ascendancy now. Buckmaster settles into 2nd spot, just behind the American. They're very wide on the track. Here comes the rest of them. Sean Giles on 19, fairly well placed there. Just behind 20, Todd Brennan. Kyle Lewis still hasn't got this one all to himself because the young Sydney sider Damon Buckmaster hasn't given up the chase by any means. Checkered flag's out there and it's taken by the American Lewis, just ahead of Buckmaster. Behind them, two other Sydney-based riders, Todd Brennan and Sean Giles. Another good race from the 250cc class there.
David Lowry, Campbell Lewis, Alan Weaver, midfield.
Heat 6 of the 250cc flat track class, the last chance for these guys to earn points and gain them the start in the semi-final. 3 Americans again, Lucero, Faria and De Hoop. Against them, probably the best place to the Australians at the moment is the Marlborough Yamaha dealer team rider, David Armstrong. Armstrong on the outside makes a good start, as does De Hoop on the inside. And Andrew Palmer on 51 sticking his bike in between those two. De Hoop's got control down the back straight the first time, but only narrowly. David Armstrong is second. Andrew Palmer showing out well in this heat. He's 3rd place at the moment. De Hoop, the leader after a lap. Armstrong second. De Hoop must be the nervous type because he keeps looking back behind him. He knows that he's got a good one there behind him in David Armstrong, but Armstrong at the moment not able to bridge that gap. He's still about 20 to 25 metres behind. down the straight this time. And another win for the American Todd de Hoop. Had a good buffer there at the end over David Armstrong, but well back the rest of the field, headed by Andrew Palmer and Dean Rowe. Riders now lining up for the 500cc flat track class. This is their second round. Eddie Warren, the race winner in the first round. The American who has based himself in Australia all season. Eddie having a fairly comfortable win in that first round ahead of two fairly well performed Australians in Glenn Bowles from Bendigo and Sean Giles of Wilpon, just west of Sydney. And either of those two will lower Warren's colours in this one. Let's see. Warren fairly wide on the track there. And he's looked to have made a good start too. Gets a good line in the first turn. Now it's Eddie Warren leading as they settle down. Second place held by Sean Giles and Glenn Bowles. So at the moment it's just like they finished in the first round. Bike 60 there, Ivan Zabo getting very high on the track, almost hitting the fence, but he regained control and I think he's still tucked in fourth spot behind Bowles. One lap gone and it's still Eddie Warren in front. Warren just riding the 500cc class in this flat track, not riding in the 250, and he's certainly making that pay off because he's out in front at the moment and looking reasonably comfortable, even though these two Aussies are having a ding-dong battle behind him. Warren there looks to be doing it fairly comfortably. Glenn Bowles very wide on the track, the other one tucked down low with Sean Giles. Down the straight. One lap to go. Warren, the race leader, high on the track. Seems to be feeling his way around the corner there, but he's still well through. No pressure at the moment coming from either of those Australians. Bowles looks behind him. He sees Giles is still pretty close by. Bowles there on the track, on the camera at the moment in 72. He's gone wide. Giles has dropped back, but there's no stopping Warren. Warren coming down the outside line to take the checkered flag. Bowles has shaken Giles off to take second spot. Giles third ahead of Ivan Zabo and Mark Salter. That was the second round for the 500cc class. They've got one round to go later in the night before their overall points winner is determined. The over 30s classic event. This is their third and final round. Both rounds to date won by the Bathurst rider Glenn McDonald. He's done them fairly easily so far in the two heats to date. Hasn't gated well, but has fairly soon assumed control and gone on to score fairly comfortable wins. Another Bathurst rider in this one, of course, is Jeff Grabham, but to date, Fred Hall Jr. and Glenn Neal have been the ones who will put the most pressure on Glenn McDonald. Tapes are up. And as they settle down, it looks like McDonald might even take the lead early. In this one he has, as they get to turn one. McDonald, a couple of bikes off the fence, has gone to take the lead. As I said, he took a lap or two to take control in the other ones, but he's done so right from the start in this particular third heat. Little trouble there behind for one rider. Looks like 118, that's Alan Jones, getting into a spot of bother there, but he's hung on in fourth place as the two riders immediately behind McDonald are again Fred Hall and Glenn Neal. They've been pretty much in contention through the earlier races as well. Good scrap, in fact, developing behind McDonald, who hasn't really pulled away in this one. Put behind him Fred Hall, Glenn Neal and Alan Jones challenging on the inside there, trying to work his way up in the third spot. McDonald, race leader. They're on their last lap now. Fred Hall with a W of the Wolves End Club on his back. Alan Jones goes low, takes him through into third spot there, ahead of Glenn Neal.
Alan Jones in third in the blue letters.
Last turn coming up now for these riders. McDonald well clear, Hall a second. Jones has gone very wide under challenge, but no stopping Glenn McDonald. Paul took second, and Glenn Neal just getting up to get back third place ahead of Alan Jones. And Glenn McDonald's win there, giving him a very comfortable overall victory in this class ahead of Fred Hall and Glenn Neal, those three having dominated each race. The over 40s now, their third and final round, and this is a decider because in the two races to date, John Langfield and Cess Platt have both had a win and a second. Platt won the first one, Langfield won the second, and obviously whoever finishes ahead in this particular race, I guess, will take the overall victory, unless both are relegated fairly well back in the field. John Sutton probably the next best performed behind those two, but to date he hasn't really issued much of a challenge to Langfield or Platt. John Langfield, mid-track, Cess Platt still back in the pack, and Langfield's the one who's got control as they go around turn one. Trevor Hunter's down low on the track, holding second spot at the moment. Here comes Platt round the outside as they go onto the back straight, but again he's got a bit of chasing to do if he's going to catch up to John Langfield. Langfield in front, Platt up to second, he's only about 10 metres behind him. I don't know whether Langey's going to make a left-hand turn or what, but Platt should know where he's going. He's got to try and get a little bit closer to Langfield. These two have pulled away again. Langfield down the back straight the second time. He's about 10 to 15 metres ahead of Platt. They've had a ding-dong battle through each of the three races, and looks like it's going to go right down to the wire to decide the overall winner in this over 40s class. Last lap now. Langfield checks again, sees that Platt's no closer. Langfield into the back straight, into turn three. Coming around turn four now to straighten up. John Langfield drifts up wide, he looks back, Cess Platt's further behind, and Langfield, as he did so many times in a great speedway career, acknowledges another checkered flag. Second place behind him is Cess Platt, followed by John Sutton, George Watson and Trevor Hunter, a couple of oldies there who've got their sons racing tonight. Overall victory in this class now going to John Langfield ahead of Cess Platt and John Sutton in third place. The semi-finals are here with us for the Australian Long Track Grand Prix. The first of them, the riders lining up now. England in this one represented by Simon Wigg and Jeremy Doncaster, Mike Ferrier the American, Brian Carger from Denmark, and some good Australian talent including Phil Crump and Brian Nixon. The first six riders in this particular race transfer straight through to the final, where they're chasing the rich prizes of a new Godden engine for first prize. Racing in the first semi, mad scramble there, but Crump from the outside looks to have made a great start. Crump coming across track, down track, and he's gone into turn one ahead of Simon Wigg. Mike Farrier's next. There's Jeremy Doncaster in fourth spot. Brian Nixon is fifth. Doncaster sweeps through on the inside of the American. Out in front, Phil Crump. Simon Wigg is second. Wigg going higher on the track. Crump's got a good line though, and he's holding the English contingent off at the moment, because I think it's Jeremy Doncaster through into third. Here's another challenge from Wigg, but Crump shuts the gate as they go around turn three. Crump's not checking his bike, he's just bending low, trying to break that wind resistance as they reach pretty high speeds down the straight. Crump, the race leader, is about 10 metres clear of Wigg. Wigg's giving it everything he's got. He hasn't lost a race so far tonight. Phil Crump coming into the main straight again. The 1 lap to go, boards out. Wigg looks behind him. He sees it's his countryman, Jeremy Doncaster, in 3rd spot. There's Mike Ferrier ahead of that next batch, headed by Brian Nixon and Brian Carger. But down the back straight for the last time, and it's still Phil Crump. He's going to be the first rider to qualify for the semis unless something goes horribly astray in this next 100 metres or so. Into the straight. He doesn't bother looking back. He knows he's got it won. Phil Crump takes the checkered flag ahead of Simon Wigg. Jeremy Doncaster is third. They're followed by Mike Ferrier, Brian Nixon and Brian Carger, and they'll all qualify through direct to the final. The other riders have got one more chance. The second semi-final, and a greater Australian contingent in this one. Just one overseas rider in this, that's the American Steve Lucero, with most of the other gun Australians in the field. Chris Watson, Glyn Taylor, he's come good at the end of the night. Stephen Davies, Len Norris, Gary Guillaume, they're all in this. Phil lining up there after another 6 places that are available for the final. Those that miss out of the top 6 have got another sudden death chance to grab the last 3 places. Man scramble in the middle of the pack there, but from the outside it looks like Chris Watson's running second at the moment, trying to pick up the rider in front as they go down the back straight. There's Watson giving chase. On the outside of him is Glyn Taylor there. He's onto the main straight this time, and Watson still giving chase to the American Steve Lucero. He's pushed Lucero wide here and looks like Watson's going to take the lead. Watson inside, Lucero outside. The American won't give ground. And he holds Watson at that point, but Watson comes again going into turn 3 and goes straight through on the inside. Good move by Watson then. He's gone up track. Here comes Lucero back on the inside, but he can't quite make it. Watson leads onto the straight after 2 laps. Lucero was second. That's Glyn Taylor in 3rd spot. Watson the leader. Lucero was second. Took Chris Watson a while to get control of this, but he's done so now and he looks pretty comfortable out in front. There's Craig Boyce on the inside. He's in about 4th spot at the moment, making his presence felt. There's the American Steve Lucero, but Chris Watson swoops around the 4th turn for the last time. He's coming up to take the checkered flag, and a fairly comfortable win for the multi-Australian champion Chris Watson there. Glyn Taylor into 2nd place. Craig Boyce has just got up to run 3rd ahead of Lucero. Tim Hunter and Stephen Davies also qualifying to the final. Earlier, we spoke to the man who made this meeting possible, Ivan Major. Ivan Major, has been a long time in the planning. Has it all been worthwhile?
Well, I actually planned this for about 25 years. I've always had an ideal on this, and even when I rode back years ago in the Port Pirie in the South Australian days, I always wanted it to be bigger and grander than actually it was. And then, of course, I got involved with my own career, and it's always been at the back of my mind to do something like this. With all the international boys, the world champions, a lot of riders in a race. Things I used to do in America on the big tracks there with 12 and 15 in a race. And
Simon Wigg made the comment that the field tonight was comparable with any of the big open meetings on the long track scene in Europe.
Well, yes, it was. I mean, we had sort of most of the guys who were in the top sort of 10 in the world. I don't think we could get much better field than we've got now, but there's a very big list of fellas who want to ride next year. And at the moment, what I wanted to do was accommodate most of the best Australians. And we achieved that. So there was people calling me about the last 14 days or so, which we had to turn down because in the end, we had 48 entries. And I wanted 48 entries. We had about 52. There's a couple of guys been injured in the last few days, so it coming down just right.
Do you foresee any great changes next year and years to come?
Well, yes, we learned a tremendous amount tonight, what to do with the stadium, how to prepare the surface, although the surface come up very good. It's an excellent surface, and I've been here for a couple of horse race meetings just to see what it performed like under the lights, and at night time, how much water they put in and so on. So we've got to strike a happy medium because we turn up a lot more dirt than the horses, of course.
The third and final round now for the 500cc flat track class. American Eddie Warren has won his first 2 races. Glenn Bowles has been placed second in each of those 2 races. Sean Giles placed third in each of those 2 races. They've certainly got the form on the board at the moment, and we're looking to them to again dominate this third and final race. Overall, this class will be decided on points over the 3 races, so the 2 Aussies, Bowles and Giles, certainly need to pull out a big effort if they're going to take the win off Warren in this particular event. Warren starting second from the outside, Bowles lifting the front wheel for a fair way down the first straight. It doesn't do him any good though, because Warren is the race leader around turn 1. Eddie Warren, as he's done for most of the night in this 500cc flat track class, leads down the back straight. Bowles is in second spot there. Rider number 18 moving through fairly well there is Mark Sawley. He's up to, I think, 4th spot at the moment. Glenn Bowles had a busy night with both long track 125 and 500cc races. At the moment he's in second spot in this one. Behind that man, Eddie Warren. There's Bowles. Giles down low on the track on the inside is in third spot. That's the finishing order in each of the 2 races so far. It looks like it might be the same in this third and deciding race. Eddie Warren, the race leader. Straight for the last time. Warren's last half lap of competition tonight. He's still got a very big Supercross meeting to go through tomorrow. Warren up very high on the track there in the heavy dirt. Down the main straight. Another checkered flag. 3 out of 3. Eddie Warren, the race leader. Glenn Bowles is second. Sean Giles is third. Followed by Ivan Zabo and Mark Salter. And that, in fact, is the finishing order overall for the 500cc class. Warren, Bowles, Giles, Zabo and Salter. Riders on the track now for the final of the 250cc flat track class. These riders have qualified through, having been the top point scorers over their 3 rounds of heats. 3 Americans, Mike Farrier, Carl Lewis and Todd DeHoop, have qualified through into this one. Australia's best chance is probably resting with young Damon Buckmaster and David Armstrong, the Yamaha team rider. Lewis is right on the outside of the track there. A bit of juggling and pushing and shoving towards the outside. Bike number 3, David Armstrong, well placed, but around the first corner. And it looks to be Mike Farrier, mid-track, going around Armstrong to take the lead. Armstrong comes back on the outside. Here's Carl Lewis through with a big charge on the inside. 3 of them locked together as they get down the end of the back straight. Todd DeHoop back in the pack at the moment in about 6th place. Mike Farrier in front. Carl Lewis very wide on the track. David Armstrong just in front of him. Farrier still in front. Young Damon Buckmaster well in contention in this one. There's Carl Lewis on the inside. David Armstrong on the outside, challenging for third. Todd DeHoop's coming to the picture now. He's in 5th place, but not far behind second. It's a good way to finish the night for all the flat track racing, because they've provided some great action right throughout the 3 classes tonight. And here's Todd DeHoop diving underneath his countryman. A couple very high. David Armstrong up high on the heavy dirt there. One on the outside almost hitting the fence. but no stopping Mike Faria. He's come away to score a very good win. Faria first, Damon Buckmaster took second, ahead of Kyle Lewis, David Armstrong. Todd DeHoop was in 5th spot. The last chance for a few more riders to gain, I think, 3 places that are left up for grabs in the Australian Long Track Grand Prix final. Small field in this one, but still these riders keen to grab a spot in the final. There's a couple of big names in this one too. Lenny Norris, one of the real star performers in dirt track racing in Australia for the last decade. He's in it, as is Gary Guillaume. Guillaume on the outside. Bike 30 there. It's not Chris Watson. Len Norris actually riding one of Chris Watson's bikes in this particular race. Guillaume's the leader. That's Norris going around the outside. Len Norris on bike number 30 ahead of Gary Guillaume. 56 is Darren Etheridge in 3rd place. Just 3 of these riders will qualify through to the final. The other 2, it's over for the night. Lenny Norris riding one of the Chris Watson machines. Onto the straight this time. Norris still in front of Guillaume. Etheridge is in 3rd spot. Justin Pryor there in 4th. He's got to make up 1 place if he's going to get a crack at the final. Lenny Norris, Gary Guillaume, about 20 metres between them. They're going to their last lap now. Both Norris and Guillaume look fairly safe out in front. Last corner for the last time. Lenny Norris. He comes up to take the checkered flag. Gary Guillaume is 3rd. A good dice for 3rd spot. And Justin Pryor on the inside has got 3rd, ahead of Shane Haggerty and Darren Etheridge. The riders now walking onto the tracks, their bikes being pushed out in preparation for the final of the Australian Long Track Grand Prix. This meeting sponsored by Continental Airlines and Lada Cars. The riders chasing a Godden engine as first prize, and the top Australasian rider in the final, wherever he finishes, gets 2 return air tickets to Honolulu. So big incentive for the Australasians in particular. If an Australasian rider is to win the final, he can take home a new Godden engine and a holiday. Bikes just about lined up on the grid now. 15 riders across the track in this one. The biggest fields we've had so far is 12. So pretty hard to find a spot there on the starting grid as those last few bikes up to the line are finding out. 15 riders across the start going for those rich prizes in the final of the Australian Long Track Grand Prix. Tapes are up, and it's a pretty crowded start. One's dived to the inside off the bike there, but Simon Wiggs, the race leader, as they get to turn number 1. Jeremy Doncaster is 2nd, and it looks like Crump 3rd ahead of Chris Watson. There's the best of the Aussies at the moment. They're 3rd and 4th. That's Phil Crump just ahead of Chris Watson. We're back to the leader. It's Simon Wigg, Jeremy Doncaster. One going very wide there. One ball out the back. I don't know who that was. Bike and rider still down on the track. Race is continuing though. It's Simon Wigg still in front. Jeremy Doncaster is still 2nd. Crump and Watson behind him. A bit of a gap back to the 5th rider. Officials trying to pull the bike off the track. The rider is moving, but he hasn't got up off the track as yet. All the field's gone past. They still haven't made any attempt to stop this race. They have now, though. Certainly the rider was moving there. We'll try and identify who it was. It's Stephen Davies, actually, the rider who fell. He fell almost out of camera shot there and was up very high on the track. and well, luckily out of harm's way, but he's up on his feet now. The Lada car there, support vehicle towing the out of commission bike back to the pits. A little bit of an anti-climax, but here we go with the restart without Stephen Davies. Simon Wigg's got to do it again. Wigg towards the outside of the starting line. And Wigg's got a bad check at the start. He got squashed out by two riders. Mid-track there is Jeremy Doncaster in front. Crump down low. Here's Wigg around the outside. Wigg goes for a big sweep around the outside. He's around Crump and around Doncaster. He goes onto the back straight. A big move by Wigg. He got a terrible check at the start, but by the time he gets to turn 3, Simon Wigg is in front. Wigg the leader. Doncaster, Crump and Watson. This is the way they were in the first attempt to run this race. Brilliant move by Simon Wigg. Englishmen ahead of 2 Australians. That's Jeremy Doncaster. He's second behind his countryman, Simon Wigg. Doncaster on screen at the moment. There's Crump, Watson. 6 laps this final. Simon Wigg, after 2 laps, he's already opened up a lead of some 40 to 50 metres over Doncaster. There's Crump. Crump's down. Looked like a chain broke. Phil Crump's fallen. He's up, out of the way. Up high on the track, out of harm's way. One of the Australian hopes out of contention, the best of them now. Here's Chris Watson. He's back in 3rd spot. And a fair way back behind this man, world long track champion Simon Wigg. Doncaster's second. Here comes Watson, moving up to challenge Doncaster. Doncaster looks like he might have some problem. He's looking down at the bike. Watson sweeps past. He's into second. Doncaster's still mobile, but he's not as quick as he was before. Simon Wigg, unbeaten in his heats. His collars were lowered in the semi-final, but he streaked them in the final. 1 lap to go. He's well clear. The world long track champion, ahead of the Australian dirt track and long track maestro, Chris Watson. Half a lap to go. Wigg's already celebrating. Pops the wheel down the back straight for the last time. Turn 3. Here he comes, onto the main straight, up to take the checkered flag in the Australian Long Track Grand Prix. A sensational victory to Englishman Simon Wigg. Chris Watson is second. It looks like the Dane Brian Carger's got up to run 3rd ahead of Craig Boyce, and he's followed home there by Brian Nixon, Mike Farrier, Glyn Taylor. Jeremy Doncaster slowed right down in the concluding stages. He was back in 8th spot ahead of Tim Hutter, Steve Lucero and Justin Pryor. There he is, the Australian Long Track Grand Prix winner, Simon Wigg. Fantastic effort by Wigg. After about 30 metres, he must have been almost last in that field, but he pulled to the outside, pulled off a superb pass around turn 1 and 2 and swept to the lead as they went down the back straight the first time. The best of the Australians, Chris Watson, he threw everything into the race, but he just couldn't match strides with the sensational Simon Wigg. Let's go trackside now to course announcer Will Hagan and the presentations.
Great welcome and well-deserved congratulations. He's second here tonight. Great credit to Chris Watson from Newcastle. And now, third all the way from Denver.
Simon Wigg, congratulations. Just how hard was it in that final?
Oh, crikey. The first turn was pretty wild. I missed the start in the second one, and I got boxed in going in the first corner, and I really thought I hadn't got much of a chance, but everybody dived to the inside, and it just left the outside of the track just with nobody there, so I thought, well, have a go, you know. So it was bloody hard work, though, I've got to say.
Was it a sort of a desperation move when you did get a bad start that you thought you had to really try and make up the ground quickly?
Well, I'm sort of faced with this situation very often on the continent, you know, on the long tracks in Europe, so it's not something that's desperate. It might look a bit wild, but, you know, there's lots of avenues that are open to you in that sort of situation, and it's, you know, we've been sort of getting that situation a few times on the continent, you know, sort of everybody's trying to box each other in, and there's only room on the outside. Normally, most people don't go for that, but if you sort of know what to expect a bit, then it's not too bad, but it can be a bit wild, that's for sure.
How big are the fields that you race in Europe? You normally only have up to 8 riders in the race there?
Yeah, eight's the maximum for international meetings. It's I'm not very keen on as many as we have tonight. I think it's a bit on the bit wild, you know. But
it was really handlebar to handlebar at the start, wasn't it?
Everybody's bumping into each other on the start line, and you know, I don't think that's really fair. You know, everybody sort of runs into each other. But there you go. That's the way it was tonight, and I just hope they don't have so many next year.
The quality of the lineup tonight comparable with some of the big long track meetings in Europe?
Yeah, super lineup. Ivan Major, the promoter here, obviously spent a lot of time putting the field together, and he's got some of the best riders from all over the world here, and I think they've done a super job, and it certainly was hard, that's for sure.
You'll be back next year to defend the crown?
Oh yeah.
Thanks very much, Simon Week.